Let's do some pruning. Tonight, we're talking about vining cucumbers. It's really important to be able to identify each part of the plant before you get to pruning. Cucumber plants have these really large leaves, these beautiful orange flowers, and also these tendrils. Let's start with the big leaves. It's the job of these large leaves to soak up the sunshine and give energy to the plant, and they also provide shade for the cucumber fruit. Cucumber vines are susceptible to mold and fungus, so it's important to remove any low-hanging leaves that could touch the soil or remain consistently wet. So here I am just removing some of those leaves that are low-hanging and not getting much sun and kind of just draining energy from your plant, not really being helpful. By removing them, it creates airflow beneath the plant. Another reason it's really important to prune your cucumbers is because they're a vine and they grow kind of crazy all over the garden. These tendrils will reach out and grab anything in their path. They're activated by touch, so as soon as they brush against something, they will begin to wrap around it, helping the vine climb. That's why I train my cucumbers to grow vertically. I just use regular old tomato cages. Last, let's talk about the flowers. They are not self-pollinators, which means they rely on bees and other insects to move the pollen from the male flower to the female flower. That's why I never prune any flowers off my cucumbers. That's also why I chose chamomile as a companion plant, because they attract pollinators to the garden. I hope these helpful tips will have you enjoying cucumbers all summer long.
Here's the tiny bit of maintenance I do for my cucumber plant that grows in a container. First, I just check all the little tendrils to make sure they're actually connecting to the trellis. Wherever there's new growth happening, I like to encourage the tendrils to attach by just sort of wrapping them around the trellis. Also, sometimes I use clips just to make sure they grow upward. Here's the tiny bit of maintenance I do.
Here's how to grow cucumbers in 60 seconds. First, start your seeds indoors. Use 3-inch seed cells, a warm casting seedling mix, and 5 seeds per cell. As the cucumbers begin to grow indoors, prepare the soil. I like a combination of 75% compost and 25% vermiculite. Third, wait until the nighttime low temperature is at least 12 Celsius or 50 Fahrenheit before beginning to harden them off. Just before planting them into the garden, put either a teepee or A-frame trellis in place so they can grow vertically. Transplant the cucumber babies using our worm castings and superfood. They're big eaters and drinkers, so this will give them everything they need to thrive. Next, remove all of the first flowers that show up on the plant. This is always heartbreaking, but it will allow the plant to focus on foliage growth, resulting in more cucumbers through the season. The second last tip is to water heavily. Cucumbers are more than 90% water, so tons of water is needed to help them absolutely thrive. And lastly, harvest early and harvest often. This will allow the plant to create more flowers and cucumbers while you enjoy those that you've harvested either fresh or pickled. Here's how to grow cucumbers.
The first year I grew cucumbers, I was absolutely disgusted and thought I would never grow a cucumber again because they did not taste the same as what was in the store. They were bitter and I quote, "They tasted like poison." When I look back on it now, I realize that it was probably just the wrong variety for us. Or maybe I let it over-ripen. I'm not totally sure. It was a while ago now, but I persevered and I've discovered a couple varieties that we really like and that taste really good and grow great in our climate. We definitely prefer a miniature variety, and the Bait Alpha cucumber from Baker Creek Seeds is awesome. I've also learned to harvest them when they're dark green and not to wait until they go yellow. Plus, you'll get more fruit if you pick them more frequently. The first year I grew...
I want to show you how to prune your cucumbers to grow more fruit and less leaves. The very first thing that you want to do is trim off all these diseased, dead, and decaying leaves. That's better. And now we want to prune to focus on fruit production. Cucumbers have a central leader as well as suckers similar to a tomato. When you follow your cucumber plant up its main stem, you're going to notice 4 things. And that's going to be the sunleaf, a tendril, a fruit, as well as a growth point. And in order for the plant to focus on fruit production, we want to remove these bushy growth points. However, if you do let a growth point grow, it will grow into its own vine with its own fruit and its own newer growth points. Pruning your cucumbers is a way to ensure that the plant is focusing on fruit production and not that unnecessary leafy growth.
This is your daily gardening tip. Once cucumbers start to grow their tendrils, it's time to train them up your trellis. If you have a pole like I do, I like to wrap the plant around the pole. Any tendrils that are at the top, curl them around the pole as well to let the plant know that it's time to start climbing vertically. If you need to, use clips to help the plant stay. But if you get the cucumbers young enough, they'll try to stay all on their own. If it falls down after you've trained it, just train it up again. Eventually, it'll get the idea that you want it to grow up. Cucumbers that grow horizontally are more susceptible to disease and pests. So tell your cucumbers it's time to grow up.